Hello.
Hi again. In our last segment, we looked at the issue of authority and how Paul sees in Ephesians that unity, stability, and maturity are impossible unless you appreciate Christ's gifts in men. And the gifts in men are listed for us there. There are 5. They are apostles, prophets, evangelizers, pastors, and teachers. The part we like, of course, that we honor is apostles and prophets because we associate them with inspiration, the inspiration of the New Testament and the Old. The ones we neglect are the evangelizers, pastors, and teachers. And that relates to a passage that I think is central to how Jehovah's Witnesses view Christendom, which we should read.
Okay.
Acts 20, I believe it's verses 29 and 30.
Yes.
In the New World Translation.
I know that after my going away, oppressive wolves will enter in among you, and will not treat the flock with tenderness. And from among you yourselves men will rise and speak twisted things, to draw away the disciples after themselves.
So what do we do with this?
As witnesses? Well, we say we justify leaving Christendom and making our own group.
Because this is Christendom.
Because Christendom did this.
Took over the church.
They took over the church and were speaking twisted things. The only problem is this says the church stays and the apostates leave actually. They leave and try and draw people after themselves. They form new groups.
So in a later video, we're going to highlight how Paul sees this sin of schism, separation, as being the flesh in action. Although we think of it, if we're in a cult, we think of it as desirable, Paul sees schism and separation and division as the flesh. Here, obviously, the church is not going to be destroyed by this. The false teachers are going to draw away disciples. So we're going to see new religions formed as the centuries go on. And you see that immediately after the apostles died. You do see that.
Yeah.
New splinter groups forming.
And that is what is common to all the cults too, is that they are separating themselves and forming new groups.
So Russell and his cohorts in the 1870s justified their separating from Christendom because they said, of course, Christendom is totally apostate, but you measure that by this. And in subsequent segments we're going to also look at other texts in the New Testament where you see the same pattern, that the apostles see the separation happening, but they don't think at any point, there's no indication they think the church is lost, that the weeds are going to completely take over.
Right.
So in the 1870s, you look at Russellism, and when we left the movement in the 1980s, I looked personally at what went wrong because it seemed to start so well.
Yeah, I mean when we started reading Russell, we heard in Russell quite a contrast to Rutherford, a very kindly approach, generous approach.
Generous even to people outside.
Yeah, and I mean they were very, so you did get the impression he was very sincere in that he was disillusioned with certain teachings of Christendom that he didn't like. And so he goes into studying the Bible, gathering around with others that are interested in Bible study, praying. So you do see sincerity there. But the problem seems to have been the complete separation.
Yeah.
So you no longer are listening to anyone else. There are no other teachers then. Just you.
So the idea of the faithful and wise servant or discreet slave idea comes in pretty early because of their total isolation from the teachers of Christendom. And there's the hypocrisy of it, because just like all the other cults accept the Bible as the authority, at least they say so,
right?
Even if they supplement it. But so did the Watchtower.
Where did they get it from?
And the truth is that, of course, the canon of the New Testament as well as the canon of the Old Testament were decided by people long before you. In fact, the very churches we say were apostate, they're the ones who struggled to bring together the Bible that we call the New Testament
Right.
that portion of it,
Yeah.
and to preserve the Old Testament, and to translate the Old Testament into the modern languages. Who did all of that?
And then the producing of all the tools that help us with the Bible.
That even the cults
Study
use.
Bibles and the all the footnotes that you have at the bottom of any Bible, including the New World Translation. Their footnotes are the fruit of the people they call apostates. The church.
So
Christendom.
there's the doublethink that we talked about in a recent Ray Franz video. The doublethink going on at headquarters. That you use the tools that Christendom provides, and then you call them names.
Right.
Slander is a very serious sin in the Bible. So we shouldn't let the cults off the hook for that one. Slander is it's the name of the devil.
Yeah.
Diabolos, the slanderer.
When David and I started going to church, and you're expecting no unity. I mean, that's what you're expecting, because that's what you've been told all along by the Watchtower. And yet, over not too long a period of time, we could see an underlying unity among churches, and we didn't just go to one denomination. We still could see an underlying common unity.
The common ground of Christendom. So I think we should devote an entire segment to the subject of what is that common ground. We're trained to see the disunity, and the biggest surprise for us was finding there is an underlying unity, and that is expressed in a mere 2 paragraphs of something called the Apostles' Creed. So we'll deal with that in a coming segment. That is the fruit of the work of the church, the struggle of the church for the first 3 centuries. A Bible canon and a common creed. The persecuted church of the Roman Empire was built around that canon that they assembled and this very small creed that they had in common. In the next segment.